The gym at Naval Special Warfare Command smelled of chalk, sweat, and the quiet discipline that only men who trained for war truly understood. Every morning at 5, an old janitor named Walter Higgins arrived before anyone else, mopping floors already spotless, wiping down equipment nobody had touched yet, moving through the building like a shadow nobody bothered to notice. The SEAL candidates training there barely acknowledged him beyond a passing nod, too consumed by their own exhaustion to wonder about the stooped old man pushing a mop bucket past their weight racks. He never spoke unless spoken to, never lingered, never explained why his hands, weathered as they were, moved with a precision that seemed almost out of place for someone simply cleaning floors. If you have ever walked past someone every single day without truly seeing them, you already understand the quiet tragedy sitting at the center of this story. And if that thought unsettles you even slightly, keep watching, because the truth about Walter was about to surface in a way none of them expected. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of gray morning that blurred into every other training day. He noticed Walter reaching up to wipe down a mirror, sleeve slipping slightly from his uniform, revealing a small faded tattoo just beneath his collarbone that crept up toward his neck. Ellison froze mid-step, his eyes narrowing, recognition flooding through him with the force of a memory he thought long buried. That symbol, worn and faded as it was, belonged to a unit so classified that most active operators today did not even know it once existed. "Where did you get that tattoo?" Ellison asked, his voice sharper than he intended, cutting through the quiet hum of the gym. Walter paused, lowering his rag slowly, his eyes betraying neither fear nor surprise, only a tired kind of resignation that comes from being asked a question you hoped no one would ever ask again. "Long time ago, Commander," he said simply, turning back to his work as though the conversation had already ended. But Ellison would not let it go, because that mark was not something earned through myth or imagination. It belonged to a covert unit deployed during operations, still sealed behind classification. Levels most men in the building had never even heard whispered. Walter Higgins, it turned out, was not merely a janitor who happened to wander into military employment after retirement. Decades earlier, he had been one of the earliest operators in a program so secretive that his own service records had been buried, altered, and eventually forgotten by a bureaucracy that moved faster than memory. He had conducted missions that shaped outcomes far beyond what any newspaper ever reported, working in shadows so deep that recognition was never part of the mission's design. He chose silence over attention, disappearing into an ordinary life that asked nothing of him except quiet persistence. Cleaning floors at the very facility where new warriors trained had never felt like a step down to him. It felt like coming home. Ellison called for the training class to gather, an unusual break in routine that immediately drew curious, exhausted stares from young candidates still dripping with sweat. He gestured toward Walter, standing awkwardly beside his mop bucket, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden attention pulling toward him. "This man," Ellison said, his voice thick with something between disbelief and reverence, "operated in conditions most of you will never be asked to survive. He carried missions that never existed on paper, for a country that will never fully know his name." The room fell silent, disbelief slowly softening into something closer to awe, as young SEAL candidates studied the same tired old janitor they had ignored for months. Seeing him now as though for the first time, Walter shifted uncomfortably under the weight of their stares, clearly unaccustomed to recognition after decades spent avoiding it entirely. "Wasn't about medals," he finally said quietly, his voice steady despite the emotion tightening around it. "Just didn't want the next man to walk in blind the way I did." From that day forward, the young SEALs no longer walked past him without a nod, a word, a moment of genuine respect earned rather than assumed. Ellison ensured his true record was finally restored, his sacrifices formally acknowledged after decades of silence. Though Walter continued showing up every morning at 5, mop in hand, because some habits outlive even recognition itself. Then don't let it pass by unnoticed. Share it with someone who needs to remember that quiet people often carry the loudest stories. Subscribe for more tales like this one, and tell us below whose hidden story deserves to finally be seen.